December 18, 1940. Berlin. The Reich Economics Ministry. Third floor. General Georg Thomas, head of the War Economy and Armaments Office, places a leather portfolio on the mahogany conference table. Inside, a comprehensive intelligence assessment titled The American Industrial Threat, an Economic Analysis. Thomas opens to page 47 and reads aloud to his staff. The United States lacks the organizational capacity, military tradition, and workforce discipline necessary for modern industrial warfare. Their automotive industry produces toys for millionaires. Their aviation sector assembles sport planes. Conversion to military production would require a cultural transformation the American character cannot sustain. The men around the table nod. One lights a cigarette. The assessment continues. Based on current production methods, the maximum feasible output of the United States aircraft industry, assuming total conversion and optimal efficiency, cannot exceed 12,000 aircraft annually. Unlikely to be achieved, given labor disorganization and democratic inefficiencies. What Thomas and his economists didn't know, what their excellent engineering and sound mathematical models couldn't predict, was that within 4 years, American factories would be producing 96,000 aircraft annually, not 12,000. 96,000. The number wasn't just wrong, it was off by a factor of 8. And that miscalculation would shatter an empire. This is the story of how Germany's best minds calculated themselves into oblivion. How racial ideology and intellectual arrogance created the most catastrophic intelligence failure of the 20th century. How the nation that invented precision engineering lost a war to what they called American chaos, and how grown men, looking at undeniable evidence, chose comfortable lies over impossible truth. Because sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't the one you underestimate, it's the one you mathematically prove cannot exist. The confidence didn't come from ignorance, it came from knowledge. In early 1940, German economic intelligence was arguably the most sophisticated in the world. The Wehrmacht's War Economy and Armaments Office employed hundreds of analysts, economists, and engineers. They had studied American industry for decades. They had informants in Detroit, agents in Pittsburgh, contacts in New York financial circles. Their assessments weren't propaganda. They were genuine analytical products, circulated at the highest levels of military planning. And every single assessment reached the same conclusion. America was not a serious military-industrial threat. The logic was sound. Germany had spent 6 years converting its economy to total war. Every factory, every resource, every worker had been systematically organized for maximum military output. The Americans, by contrast, were still producing 3.5 million civilian automobiles in 1940. Their factories ran single shifts. Their workers belonged to unions that negotiated work hours and conditions. Their aviation companies were small, specialized firms that handcrafted luxury aircraft for airlines and wealthy sportsmen. Colonel Fritz Todt, head of the Reich Ministry of Armaments, reviewed the American production data with his engineers. The numbers told a clear story. Ford's River Rouge plant, the largest industrial complex in America, produced one automobile every 60 seconds using the most advanced assembly line techniques in the world. Impressive for consumer goods. Irrelevant for warfare. Because modern military equipment couldn't be mass-produced like automobiles. A Messerschmitt Bf-109 fighter required 5,000 precision parts. Each part needed skilled craftsmen, specialized tooling, exact tolerances. The assembly process demanded experienced aircraft workers who understood aerodynamics, stress engineering, weapons integration. Germany's aviation industry employed master craftsmen who had trained for years. These weren't assembly line workers bolting together simple machines. These were specialists conducting sophisticated manufacturing. The German calculation was straightforward. America had approximately 12,000 qualified aircraft workers in 1940. Each worker could feasibly contribute to producing one aircraft per month under optimal conditions. 12,000 workers, 12,000 aircraft annually. The mathematics was elementary. except the mathematics was based on German methodology. And the Americans weren't going to build aircraft the German way. In the spring of 1941, a low-level Abwehr analyst named Hermann Müller received an intelligence summary from agents in Detroit. It described a new Ford facility under construction near a small community called Willow Run. The planned building would be 1 mile long, quarter-mile wide, the largest single-story factory ever conceived. The stated purpose: mass production of B-24 Liberator bombers using automotive assembly techniques. Mueller read the specifications twice, then wrote in his margin, "Allied propaganda. Technically impossible." His assessment was filed with hundreds of similar reports. American boasts, Roosevelt's exaggerations, desperate Allied attempts at psychological warfare. The German engineering community knew better. You couldn't build a 4-engine heavy bomber on an assembly line. The complexity was too great, the tolerances too fine, the systems integration too sophisticated. Hermann Göring, commander of the Luftwaffe, addressed his officers in June 1941. "The Americans? They make good razor blades and refrigerators. Let them send us their car salesmen and jazz musicians. We'll send them back our Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs." The room erupted in laughter. The confidence was genuine, and it was about to meet reality. December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor burns. 4 days later, Germany declares war on the United States. In Berlin, General Thomas updates his economic assessments. He calculates American industrial conversion will take 18 months minimum. Full military production capacity, assuming successful reorganization, perhaps 20,000 aircraft annually by late 1943. The actual American production in 1943 would be 85,000 aircraft. But Thomas couldn't know that, because Thomas was using German logic to predict American capability, and the Americans weren't playing by German rules. January 1942, the first intelligence reports arrive from German agents in America describing factory construction programs. The numbers seem absurd. Boeing's Seattle facility expanding to 1.2 million square feet, Douglas Aircraft breaking ground on a new plant in Oklahoma City, designed to employ 23,000 workers, Consolidated Aviation in San Diego operating 3 shifts, 3 full shifts of workers, 8 hours each, around the clock. Captain Wilhelm Fischer, chief industrial analyst for OKW Intelligence, reads these reports with growing irritation. He writes to his superior, "Allied sources continue to publish fantastical production claims that violate basic industrial mathematics. I recommend we discontinue analysis of obvious disinformation and focus on realistic capability assessments." The recommendation is approved. German intelligence begins filtering out reports that seemed statistically impossible. The filtering process is logical, scientific, rigorous. It is also removing accurate information and replacing it with comforting fiction. Because in Willow Run, Michigan, something unprecedented is beginning. The Ford engineers approach the B-24 Liberator like a mechanical problem, not an aircraft problem. They photograph every component, catalog every part, measure every dimension. Then they start asking uncomfortable questions. Why does this bracket require hand fitting? Why are these rivets different sizes? Why does every fuel line need individual fabrication? The aircraft engineers explain, because every bomber is slightly unique, each assembly requires skilled craftsmen making micro-adjustments. That's how aircraft manufacturing works. The Ford engineers respond, "That's how German aircraft manufacturing works. We're going to do it differently." They redesign 60,000 parts. May 1942, a reconnaissance Focke-Wulf Condor, operating at extreme range from occupied France, photographs the American East Coast. The mission is routine: catalog industrial facilities, assess shipping, monitor mobilization. The photographs reach Luftwaffe intelligence 3 weeks later. One series shows a shipyard in Portland, Maine. The analyst counts the vessels under construction, 14 identical merchant ships, called Liberty ships, according to intercepted communications. in various stages of assembly. Standard intelligence work document, enemy shipping construction rates. Then, a detail catches his attention. Chalked on the hull of one nearly completed ship, keel laid April 15th, launch date May 3rd, 18 days from keel to launch, for a 10,000-ton cargo vessel. The analyst checks his reference materials. German shipyards, using modern techniques and experienced workers, require approximately 8 months to construct a vessel of similar size. British yards average 6 months. The Japanese have achieved 5 months with prefabrication techniques. 18 days is physically impossible. He marks the photograph, date error, and moves on. The alternative, that the Americans have somehow revolutionized shipbuilding, is too absurd to consider. But it isn't a date error. The Liberty ship Robert E. Peary, built at Kaiser Permanente Shipyard No. 2 in Richmond, California, will soon establish a record, keel laid to launch in 4 days, 15 hours, not 18 days, 4 days. The German analyst never sees that report, because by mid-1942, German intelligence has established filtering protocols. Reports that exceed feasible production parameters are automatically flagged as disinformation. The system is logical. The problem is that American production has exceeded feasible parameters. By late 1942, the disconnect between German estimates and American reality has become a chasm. OKW Economics Office predicts American tank production for 1942 at approximately 8,000 vehicles, based on factory capacity assessments and realistic conversion timelines. The actual American production, 24,997 tanks, not 8,000, 25,000. And German intelligence doesn't know, because the truth doesn't fit the model. Lieutenant Colonel Wilhelm Meyer, senior production analyst at the Reich Economics Ministry, maintains a private file of anomalous reports, intelligence that seems credible in sourcing but impossible in content. By December 1942, the file is 3 inches thick. Serial number analysis from captured American equipment suggests Ford's Willow Run facility is producing B-24 bombers at impossible rates. Luftwaffe pilots report encountering bomber formations with aircraft serial numbers separated by fewer than 50 digits, suggesting production runs of dozens of identical aircraft per week. Agents in Portugal forward shipping manifests indicating American cargo vessels delivering war materials at volumes that would require hundreds of ships. Meyer doesn't dismiss these reports as fabrications. His analysis is more sophisticated. He concludes the Americans are systematically falsifying serial numbers and shipping documents to create an illusion of greater production. It's psychological warfare. Make the Germans believe they're drowning in American equipment, damage morale, encourage defeatism. His report is well received at headquarters. It confirms what everyone already believes. The Americans are exaggerating. The alternative is unthinkable. In January 1943, something breaks through the cognitive firewall. A U-boat commander, returning from patrol off the American East Coast, includes an unusual observation in his after-action report. His boat had surfaced at night near Norfolk, Virginia, to charge batteries. Standing on the conning tower, he counted the lights of ships leaving harbor. In 4 hours of observation, he counted 127 vessels departing, cargo ships, tankers, escort vessels. He wrote, "The harbor appears to be launching convoys continuously. Previous intelligence estimated American merchant ship availability at approximately 800 vessels. Observed traffic suggests numbers significantly higher." The report reaches Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of the U-boat fleet. Dönitz has his own concerns. His boats are sinking Allied shipping at a rate he calculates should be strangling British supply lines, yet British ports continue receiving cargo. The numbers don't reconcile. Requests updated Allied shipping capacity estimates from naval intelligence. The response: approximately 1,200 Allied merchant vessels currently operational, based on pre-war numbers and estimated construction rates. What German intelligence doesn't know: American shipyards are launching 140 new merchant vessels every month. The Allied merchant fleet isn't shrinking, it's growing. While U-boats sink 100 ships per month, America builds 140. The mathematics of attrition have reversed. But Donitz doesn't get those numbers, because German intelligence has calculated that 140 ships per month is impossible. Therefore, any evidence suggesting 140 ships per month must be disinformation. The filtering system is working perfectly. It's filtering out reality. March 1943, Albert Speer, recently appointed Reich Minister of Armaments and War Production, requests a comprehensive assessment of Allied industrial capacity. He's a practical man, an architect by training, results-oriented. He wants facts, not ideology. His ministry compiles every available intelligence report, every agent assessment, every piece of technical analysis. They produce a 300-page document estimating current Allied production across all categories: aircraft, tanks, ships, artillery, ammunition, vehicles. The estimates represent the ceiling of what German analysts believe is physically possible, given Allied resources and industrial organization. The numbers are sobering. American aircraft production estimated at 40,000 annually, tank production at 20,000, merchant shipping construction at perhaps 60 vessels monthly. Speer presents these figures to Hitler in April 1943. He frames them carefully. Even accepting these maximum estimates, Germany's qualitative superiority and operational efficiency can offset American quantity. But the war cannot last indefinitely. The mathematics of attrition favor eventual Allied numerical dominance. Hitler's response is sharp. These numbers are defeatist speculation. The Americans cannot sustain such production. Their workforce is undisciplined, their economy chaotic, their national character too soft for sustained sacrifice. You're accepting Roosevelt's propaganda as truth. Speer tries to explain, the estimates aren't based on American claims, but on German engineering assessments of maximum feasible output given observed factory construction. Hitler interrupts. Maximum feasible by whose standards? Ours. We organize efficiently because we're German. The Americans organize like children playing with blocks. Speer returns to his ministry troubled, not because Hitler rejected the numbers, but because Speer suspects even his maximum feasible estimates might be too low. He has no idea how right he is. The actual American aircraft production for 1943, 85,000. The actual tank production, 29,000. The actual merchant ship construction, 140 vessels per month, every month, for 12 consecutive months. Speer's maximum feasible estimates are off by 50% to 100% across every category, and he's already being accused of defeatism for suggesting numbers that are half the truth. In late spring 1943, a Luftwaffe reconnaissance pilot photographs the Willow Run facility from 30,000 feet. The images reach intelligence analysts in Berlin 3 weeks later. One analyst, a young lieutenant named Karl Hoffmann, who studied architecture before the war, becomes fixated on the photographs. He calculates the building's dimensions from scale references: 1 mile long, quarter mile wide, 3.5 million square feet under a single roof. He does the mathematics. If this facility is dedicated to bomber production, and if the Americans have truly implemented assembly line techniques, and if the building operates 3 shifts, the theoretical maximum output would be impossible to calculate because it exceeds any reference model in his training. Hoffman writes a memo to his superior, request clarification on Willow Run facility actual production output. Photographic analysis suggests capacity far exceeding current intelligence estimates. The response comes back. Your calculation methodology is faulty. Aerial photography cannot determine interior production organization. Continue with assigned tasks. But he keeps thinking about that building. 1 mile long, 3 shifts, 7 days per week. What could they possibly be building in there? July 22, 1943. Schweinfurt, Germany. Colonel Heinz Weber, logistics officer for the 1st Fighter Division, receives a routine supply manifest. Among the standard equipment requests, one line item catches his attention: engine analysis of Allied aircraft, priority investigation. They've been examining engines recovered from shot-down American fighters and bombers. The analysis is dry, technical, unremarkable, except for one detail: serial number analysis of Wright R-1820 engines recovered from B-17 bombers shows sequential production numbers spanning fewer than 300 units across aircraft shot down in the same week. Sequential numbers suggest these engines came off production lines within days of each other. If accurate, this implies Wright Aeronautical is producing thousands of complex aircraft engines monthly. Weber knows this is impossible. A radial aircraft engine contains 2,500 precisely machined parts. Each cylinder requires individual machining to tolerances of thousandths of an inch. The crankshaft alone demands weeks of precision work. His own Bavarian Motor Works produces excellent BMW 801 engines at a rate of approximately 500 per month, and BMW is among the most efficient engine manufacturers in Germany. Thousands monthly from a single American factory? Propaganda embedded in false serial numbers. Obviously. Except the BMW engineers have physically disassembled these engines. They're not propaganda. They're real engines, measurably identical to one another, showing manufacturing techniques that standardize components to a degree German precision engineering considers unnecessary. Weber forwards the report with a note: recommend investigation of Allied serial number falsification procedures for psychological warfare purposes. And it's being noticed in places that matter. August 1943. General Adolf Galland, commander of Luftwaffe fighter forces, meets with his squadron leaders to review combat reports from recent operations against American bomber formations over occupied Europe. The tactical discussions are routine: attack vectors, gun positions, escort fighter behavior. Then one squadron commander raises an unexpected observation. Herr General, my pilots report the American bombers they encounter are increasingly new aircraft, fresh paint, no combat wear, newer equipment variants. We estimate 60% of bombers we engage are fewer than 3 months old, based on visual assessment. Another commander agrees, my assessment is similar. We are not facing a static force being slowly worn down. We are facing continuous replacement. Galland knows bomber attrition rates. The Americans are losing 4% to 6% of attacking aircraft on major operations, unsustainable losses by any military standard. These loss rates should be destroying their bomber fleet faster than they can replace it, unless they're producing bombers faster than German calculations predict. Much faster. Galland requests updated intelligence on American bomber production capacity. The response: estimated production of B-17 and B-24 bombers combined, approximately 350 aircraft monthly. If true, the mathematics work. Loss rates of 4–6% across monthly operations would roughly equal production replacement. Equilibrium. But Galland's pilots aren't reporting equilibrium. They're reporting ever larger formations, more bombers, better equipment, newer aircraft. He sends a classified memo to OKW intelligence. Request verification of current American bomber production estimates. Frontline observations suggest significant underestimation of enemy replacement capacity. The response takes 3 weeks. When it arrives, it's polite but dismissive. Current production estimates based on comprehensive industrial analysis and confirmed through multiple intelligence sources. Frontline observations likely affected by psychological factors and enemy deception operations. You don't build a career in the Luftwaffe by questioning intelligence assessments. But he stops believing the numbers. The actual American production of B-17 and B-24 bombers in August 1943, 1,200 aircraft, not 350, 1,200. In a single month, September 1943, the cognitive dissonance reaches Albert Speer's desk in the form of a curious technical report. A team of German engineers has analyzed a captured American half-track vehicle, an M3 personnel carrier recovered intact in Italy. The analysis is detailed, professional, thorough. The conclusions are disturbing. The vehicle is cruder than equivalent German designs, heavier, less fuel efficient. The engineering shows evidence of rapid design compromises, standardized parts, simplified manufacturing, reduced tolerances. By German standards, it's crude work. But the serial number indicates this vehicle is from a production run exceeding 15,000 units, 15,000 of a single vehicle variant. The German engineers calculate production requirements. Even with simplified design, manufacturing 15,000 armored vehicles would require vast factory capacity, enormous quantities of armor plate, hundreds of trained assembly workers, complex logistics chains for specialized components. Their conclusion: the indicated production numbers likely represent cumulative Allied production across multiple vehicle types, deliberately mislabeled to exaggerate American manufacturing capacity. But then a second captured vehicle arrives. Different serial number sequence, same production run exceeding 10,000 units, then a third vehicle, and a fourth. Either the Americans are running an impossibly sophisticated serial number deception operation across dozens of vehicle types, or they're actually producing armored vehicles in quantities that make no sense by German manufacturing standards. Speer reads the report in his office overlooking the Tiergarten. He doesn't dismiss it. He adds it to a growing private file he doesn't share with anyone. October 1943. Breaking point. A Luftwaffe photo reconnaissance flight over England, operating at extreme altitude to avoid fighters, photographs American bomber airfields in East Anglia. The mission is routine: count enemy aircraft, assess base facilities, monitor force levels. The photographs reach analysis section 3 days later. Lieutenant Klaus Brenner, an experienced photo interpreter, begins the systematic count. Bassingbourn Airfield, 43 B-17 bombers visible. Thurley Airfield, 41 B-17s. Kimbleton, 38. Standard procedure is counting visible aircraft, noting any changes from previous reconnaissance, calculating approximate force strength. Brenner has done this hundreds of times. Then he notices something in one photograph: Bassingbourn Airfield, parking apron. He counts the B-17s again, more carefully. Then he pulls reconnaissance photos from the same base taken 6 weeks earlier. 6 weeks ago, 41 B-17s visible, including 3 showing visible combat damage on parking areas. Current photos, 43 B-17s visible. None of the damaged aircraft from the previous photograph are present. All visible aircraft appear operational. In 6 weeks, the damaged aircraft have been removed, replaced, and force strength has increased by 2 aircraft, despite the Americans flying multiple combat missions per week from this base with documented losses. Brenner pulls photographs from 8 other American bomber bases in England. The pattern repeats. Every base shows equal or increased aircraft numbers compared to photographs from 6 weeks prior, despite continuous combat operations and confirmed losses. He writes up his analysis with an observation. Enemy replacement rates appear to exceed attrition rates across all observed bases. Force strength is increasing despite sustained combat operations. His report is filed. No response comes. Because what can they say? That the Americans are producing bombers faster than the Luftwaffe can destroy them? That every bomber shot down is replaced within days? That the formation sizes are growing larger, not because they're concentrating forces, but because they have more forces to concentrate? The truth is unacceptable. So it's filed. November 12, 1943. Albert Speer requests a private meeting with Hitler. It's granted reluctantly. Hitler has little patience for production discussions that don't promise wonder weapons and guaranteed victory. Speer brings a single folder. Inside, updated Allied production estimates based on recent intelligence, frontline observations, and captured equipment serial number analysis. The numbers are staggering. American aircraft production, estimated 72,000 for 1943. Tank production, 28,000. Merchant shipping, 1,800 vessels. Automotive production converted to military vehicles, 800,000 trucks. Speer presents the numbers calmly, analytically. He explains his methodology. These aren't American propaganda claims. They're German calculations based on physical evidence and mathematical modeling. Hitler listens in silence. When Speer finishes, the Führer's response is cold. These numbers represent defeatist capitulation to enemy psychological warfare. You're accepting as fact what the enemy wants you to believe. I'm disappointed, Speer. Speer tries to explain. The serial numbers, the reconnaissance photographs, the frontline reports all confirm. Hitler cuts him off. The Americans are producing cars and refrigerators in green paint. They're playing factory. When those toys meet real military equipment operated by real soldiers, quality destroys quantity. Always. This meeting is over. What's the point? The truth can't compete with ideology. But in his private diary that night, Speer writes, "We are living in a mathematical fantasy. The war we think we're fighting ended 6 months ago. We lost. We just haven't admitted it yet." The actual American production for 1943, 85,998 aircraft, 29,497 tanks, 19.2 million tons of merchant shipping. Speer's defeatist estimates were still 15% too low. January 1944, the Reich Ministry of Armaments establishes a new department, Allied Production Assessment Group. The formation is quiet, the mission classified. Albert Speer personally selects the staff: engineers, economists, intelligence analysts, mathematicians. Their directive: determine actual Allied industrial capacity using only verifiable physical evidence. Ignore propaganda, ignore ideology, calculate reality. The team works in isolation for 6 weeks. They analyze thousands of serial numbers from captured equipment. They study reconnaissance photographs with precise mathematical models. They interview every German officer who has observed Allied equipment concentrations. They review shipping manifests, captured documents, intercepted communications, agent reports. In March 1944, they present their findings. The report is 127 pages. The summary is devastating. Verified American aircraft production, 1943, minimum 82,000 units. Verified tank production, minimum 27,000. Merchant shipping construction, confirmed 140-plus vessels monthly. Artillery pieces, over 100,000. Military trucks, over 600,000. Small arms ammunition, mathematically incalculable. Estimates exceed billions of rounds. But the numbers alone aren't the revelation. The methodology is. The analysts discovered the Americans aren't building military equipment the way military equipment has always been built. They're building it the way Ford builds cars: complete interchangeability, unskilled labor, simplified designs, massive production runs, continuous operation. A German Panther tank requires 55,000 man-hours. To produce, each tank is slightly unique. Replacement parts must be hand-fitted. Repairs require skilled technicians. A damaged Panther often becomes a parts donor because repairs exceed replacement capacity. An American Sherman tank requires 10,000 man-hours. Every Sherman is identical. Any part fits any tank. Repairs use standardized components installed by mechanics with basic training. A damaged Sherman is back in service within days, or if too damaged, it's replaced within a week. The report's conclusion is clinical. American industrial strategy optimizes for volume and replacement rather than individual quality. This approach, previously dismissed as inefficient, proves devastatingly effective in sustained warfare. German strategy optimizes for qualitative superiority of individual units. This approach proves insufficient against numerical superiority of 5-1 to 8-1 in most equipment categories. Translation: Germany is producing Steinway pianos. America is producing harmonicas. and they're flooding the battlefield with 1,000,000 harmonicas. Speer reads the report 3 times, then he locks it in his personal safe. The numbers are too dangerous. If this circulates, morale collapses. If it reaches Hitler, the analysts might be arrested for defeatism. The report is classified Fördervortrag, for Hitler's presentation only. It never reaches Hitler, because Speer knows Hitler will reject it, possibly violently. The Führer's ideology cannot accommodate the possibility that democratic chaos outperforms fascist organization. But the truth doesn't care about ideology. April 1944, Generalfeldmarschall Erwin Rommel, inspecting Atlantic wall defenses in France, speaks with his chief of staff about Allied invasion prospects. "How many tanks do we estimate the Americans can land in the first week of an invasion?" Rommel asks. His chief of staff consults intelligence estimates, approximately 400 to 600 tanks, assuming optimal landing conditions and no significant interference. Rommel nods, then asks a different question. And how many tanks can they land in the second week? And third week, if we destroy their first wave, how long before they can rebuild invasion strength? Because German planning has always focused on defeating the initial assault, the concept of an enemy that can simply reload and attack again within days is outside their operational framework. Rommel received a classified report 3 months earlier, an assessment from a colleague in Italy describing American logistics. After a German counterattack destroyed an entire American armored battalion, the Americans replaced every lost tank within 72 hours. Not repaired. Replaced. Brand new tanks, driven off ships, fully crewed, combat-ready, within 3 days. Rommel understood then what official intelligence refuses to acknowledge. They're not fighting an army. They're fighting a factory with an army attached. May 1944. A Luftwaffe intelligence officer receives an unusual request from a fighter squadron commander. The commander has been tracking serial numbers from shot-down American P-51 Mustang fighters. His pilots have recorded tail numbers from 53 destroyed P-51s over the past 2 months. The serial numbers show a curious pattern. They're sequential, but not grouped. Tail numbers suggest these 53 aircraft came from a single production batch of approximately 800 aircraft, all manufactured within a 6-week period. 800 P-51s in 6 weeks from a single factory. The intelligence officer checks his reference files. Current estimates place total American P-51 production capacity at approximately 300 aircraft monthly across all manufacturers. But these serial numbers suggest North American Aviation alone produced 800 in 6 weeks. That's 1,200 monthly, from one factory, 4 times the estimated total American production. The officer begins drafting a report, then stops. He knows what will happen. The serial numbers will be declared falsified. His methodology will be questioned. The report will be filed under disinformation. The actual American P-51 production for 1944, 9,152 aircraft. The intelligence officer's extrapolation from serial numbers wasn't wrong. It was, if anything, conservative. June 6, 1944. Normandy. D-Day. In the first 24 hours of invasion, Allied forces land 156,000 troops. In the first week, 326,000 troops, 54,000 vehicles, 104,000 tons of supplies. The numbers are beyond anything in German operational planning, because German logistics couldn't conceive of moving that much materiel that quickly. By July, American forces in Normandy are receiving 20,000 tons of supplies daily across the invasion beaches. 20,000 tons. Every day. The entire German logistics network supporting the Western Front moves approximately 15,000 tons daily through established rail infrastructure. The Americans are sustaining greater logistical throughput across temporary beach facilities than Germany can achieve through its entire rail network in France. A German logistics officer, Major Karl Schmidt, observes American supply dumps from defensive positions outside Caen. He watches trucks arrive in continuous streams, unload supplies, depart, return. He counts trucks for an hour, 180 vehicles pass through one supply point. He calculates 180 trucks per hour, 12 hours of observable daylight operations, minimum 2,000 trucks in continuous operation for this single supply point, multiple supply points across the front, thousands of trucks, all identical, all new, all running continuously. Where do these trucks come from? How many factories? How many workers? How is this possible? Schmidt requests American truck production estimates from intelligence. The response: approximately 30,000 military trucks monthly. He stares at that number. 30,000 trucks. Every month. More than Germany's entire motor vehicle production for all military branches combined. He makes a calculation in his notebook. If the Americans lose 1,000 trucks per week to combat, breakdowns, and accidents, a catastrophic attrition rate, they replace the losses in 1 week and have 26,000 trucks left over for expansion. The mathematics are insane. But the trucks in front of him are real. August 1944. Albert Speer receives the updated Allied production figures for 1943, finally compiled and verified. Aircraft, 85,998. Tanks, 29,497. Artillery, 102,410 pieces. Military trucks, 812,000. Merchant ships, 2,000. He reads the numbers in his office. Then he writes a letter to Hitler, his 6th attempt to convey industrial reality. He carefully frames the data. These aren't estimates. These are verified production numbers from the previous year, confirmed through serial number analysis and captured documentation. He requests a meeting to discuss strategic implications. The request is denied. A staff officer returns the letter with a handwritten note from Hitler. I don't need production statistics. I need you to produce more weapons. There's no point. They're living in different realities. Hitler exists in a universe where willpower shapes outcomes. Speer exists in a universe where production capacity determines winners. The problem is they're both in the same war, and only one universe is real. September 1944. A remarkable document surfaces from interrogated American pilot shot down over Germany. In his personal effects, a maintenance manual for the B-24 Liberator bomber, a Luftwaffe technical officer begins reading it as a routine intelligence item. On page 12, he stops. The manual lists replacement parts availability. Engines, available at all depot-level maintenance facilities. Standard replacement time, 4 hours, with experienced crew. The manual treats it as routine, like changing a tire. The officer flips to sections on battle damage repair. The procedures assume that any damage can be repaired, or components completely replaced. There's no discussion of hand-fitting parts or custom machining. Every component is standardized, catalogued, warehoused, available. The manual describes an industrial system where nothing is unique. Everything is replaceable. Loss is temporary. Damage is fixable. Attrition is meaningless because production exceeds destruction. The officer realizes he's looking at the doctrine of a nation that treats war machines as consumable. They don't repair their bombers with the care Germany lavishes on each aircraft. They fix them like appliances, and if they can't, they scrap them and get new ones. Because they have new ones. Hundreds waiting. Thousands in production. Tens of thousands planned. He files the manual without comment. What can he say? That the Americans have industrialized warfare itself? That they've made military equipment disposable? That they're winning through sheer productive excess? It's all true, and it's all useless to report, because Germany cannot copy the American system. German industrial culture, German military tradition, German national ideology, everything that makes Germany German is structured around quality, precision, efficiency. The Americans have won by being inefficient, imprecise, and wasteful. And there's no German response to that. April 1945, Berlin. The Reich is collapsing. Albert Speer meets with Hitler for the last time in the Führer bunker. The conversation is brief, bitter. Hitler demands production statistics. How many tanks? How many aircraft? How many bullets? Speer provides numbers, meaningless numbers. Germany's production capacity has been bombed into rubble by those impossible quantities of American bombers that weren't supposed to exist. Before he leaves, Speer makes one final attempt. He says quietly, "My Führer, we lost this war in 1941. We just didn't know it yet." Hitler stares at him with empty eyes. "Defeatist talk, Speer. We lost nothing. They overwhelmed us with crude quantity. That's not victory, that's industrial barbarism." Speer doesn't respond. What's left to say? That barbarism won. That crude quantity beats sophisticated quality when the quantity is 8-1, that the 1,000-year Reich lost to assembly lines. Hitler dismisses him. Speer walks out of the bunker for the last time. Above him, Berlin burns under bombs produced in quantities German engineers proved were mathematically impossible. May 8, 1945. Germany surrenders unconditionally. The war in Europe ends. In the aftermath, American military intelligence teams fan out across occupied Germany with a specific mission: interview German military leaders, economists, intelligence analysts, understand what they knew, when they knew it, and why they failed to act on it. June 1945. Interrogation Facility, Nuremberg. Albert Speer sits across from American investigators. They ask him about German production planning, intelligence assessments, industrial strategy. The Americans show him the actual Allied production figures for 1940. 1945. Speer reads them in silence. American aircraft, 324,750 total. Tanks, 88,410. Artillery pieces, 257,390. Trucks, 2,382,311. Merchant ships, 5,150 vessels. The interrogator asks, "When did you realize Germany couldn't match this production?" Speer answers carefully, "I suspected in late 1943. I knew with certainty by mid-1944. But knowing didn't matter. We couldn't admit what we knew." Why not? Because the numbers violated our understanding of industrial reality. We calculated maximum feasible American output based on our methods, our efficiency, our organizational models. By our standards, which were excellent standards, German engineering standards, the numbers you're showing me are impossible. We did it. Speer nods slowly. You did it by abandoning everything we considered essential to quality manufacturing. You used unskilled workers. You simplified designs to crude levels. You accepted inefficiencies we would never tolerate. You built things to be thrown away and replaced rather than maintained and perfected. And that worked, obviously. Speer's voice is bitter. You industrialized war itself. You treated tanks like tin cans and aircraft like automobiles. You made warfare cheap, mass-produced, disposable. It's barbaric. And it won. The interrogator makes notes, then asks, "Did you ever present these numbers to Hitler?" "I tried. Many times. He rejected them as propaganda or defeatism. He believed, genuinely believed, that German quality would overcome Allied quantity, that superior soldiers with superior equipment would defeat masses of inferior equipment operated by inferior soldiers. He was wrong. Catastrophically wrong. But his wrongness was built on correct premises. German engineering was superior. German soldiers were often better trained. German equipment was frequently better designed. All of that was true. What Hitler couldn't accept was that it didn't matter. When the enemy can replace losses at 8-1 rates, quality is irrelevant. The interrogation continues for hours. When it ends, Speer returns to his cell. The American interrogator writes in his report, "Subject demonstrates clear understanding of comparative industrial capacity and appears genuinely shocked by actual Allied production figures, despite having estimated numbers higher than any other German official. Ideology appears to have created institutional blindness, even among rational economic planners." July 1945. Interrogation of General Feldmarschall Wilhelm Keitel, Chief of OKW, American interrogator. When did German intelligence realize the extent of American production capacity? They were clearly wrong, but we believed them because the alternative was unthinkable. What was unthinkable? That's not industrial capacity. That's a joke, a fantasy. Yet you did it. Somehow you did it. Why didn't German intelligence adjust estimates when evidence contradicted them? Because we filtered evidence through our assumptions. We assumed American production would follow German methodologies. We calculated maximum feasible output using our standards. When evidence exceeded our calculations, we rejected the evidence, rather than questioning our assumptions. It's worse than that. It's a cultural failure. German identity is built on precision, efficiency, organizational superiority. Accepting that American chaos outproduced German order meant accepting that everything we believed about ourselves was wrong. So we rejected the evidence. We chose comfortable lies over impossible truth.
August 1945. A team of American aviation experts tours German aircraft factories.
They interviewed German engineers, examined production techniques, analyzed quality control procedures. The German methods are impressive. Skilled craftsmen, precise tolerances, sophisticated quality verification. Each Messerschmitt or Focke-Wulf is a masterwork of engineering. One American engineer, studying the production line at the Messerschmitt Regensburg plant, asks the German plant manager, "How many workers does it take to build one Bf-109? The manager answers proudly, 57 specialized workers, approximately 4,000 man-hours per aircraft. We build P-51s with 12 workers and 2,500 man-hours. The German manager looks offended. Impossible. The P-51 is a sophisticated aircraft, complex systems, precise requirements. The American explains, we design for manufacturing. Standardized parts, simplified assembly, reduced tolerances to what's actually necessary rather than what's theoretically optimal. Your aircraft are better made. Ours are faster to make. And in war, faster matters more than better. The German manager has no response. The American is describing everything German engineering culture rejects, sacrificing precision for speed, accepting good enough instead of perfect. And yet the Americans won. September 1945. Final interrogation of Hermann Göring, former Luftwaffe commander. American interrogator presents him with American aircraft production figures. 324,750 total aircraft. 1941, 1945. Göring reads the number twice, then laughs, a bitter, defeated sound. You're telling me this to humiliate me. No, these are verified production numbers. No nation produces 324,000 military aircraft in 4 years. We did. Here's the factory-by-factory breakdown. Göring reads the detailed figures. Boeing Seattle, 6,981 B-17s. Douglas Long Beach, 3,000 C-47s. Willow Run, 8,685 B-24s. North American, 15,000 P-51s. His face changes. The defiance drains away. He looks old. Willow Run. We photographed that factory in 1943. I saw the pictures. I told my analysts it was impossible. One building cannot produce thousands of bombers. They agreed with me. We all agreed. It produced 8,685 B-24s. Göring sits in silence. Then, I underestimated you. We all did. We thought America was soft, undisciplined, incapable of sacrifice. We thought your democracy made you weak, your diversity made you chaotic, your capitalism made you selfish. You were wrong, obviously. Your diversity meant you could recruit workers from anywhere. Your capitalism meant you could scale production without bureaucratic constraints. Your democracy meant your people actually believed in what they were fighting for. We saw weaknesses. They were all strengths. And we never understood until it was too late. The interrogator makes notes. Göring stares at the production figures. 324,750 aircraft. We managed 119,000 across all types. You outproduced us 3-2-1. And you did it while also fighting Japan, supplying Britain and Russia, and building the largest navy in history. It's almost admirable. Almost. Almost. Goering looks up. It's terrifying. You industrialized death. You made warfare a manufacturing problem, and solved it with assembly lines. There's nothing human in that. Nothing honorable. Just efficiency. Cold, brutal, overwhelming efficiency. It ended the war. It ended the world I knew, where warriors mattered more than factories, where quality defeated quantity, where a pilot's skill meant something against a machine. Goering's voice is hollow. You built a future where none of that matters, where wars are won by accountants and production managers, where courage and skill are irrelevant against enough bullets and bombs. That's always been true. We just proved it. December 1945. Final assessment report, compiled by U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey, based on captured German documents and interrogations. Conclusion. German intelligence systematically underestimated Allied production capacity by factors ranging from 200% to 800% depending on equipment category. This failure stemmed not from lack of information, but from institutional inability to accept information that contradicted German industrial assumptions. German planners calculated Allied capacity based on German methodologies, creating estimates that were mathematically sound, but fundamentally wrong. When confronted with evidence of higher Allied production, German officials rejected the evidence rather than revising assumptions. This intelligence failure prevented Germany from developing appropriate strategic responses to Allied material superiority and contributed significantly to German defeat. Translation: Germany calculated itself into oblivion. Their engineering was excellent, their logic was sound, their mathematics were perfect. They just calculated the wrong problem. April 1946. A small museum in Munich opens an exhibit on wartime production. One display case contains an American technical manual for the Liberty ship, the 10,000-ton cargo vessel produced in an average of 42 days, with one ship famously built in less than 5 days. A former German naval architect stands before the display, reading the specifications. A visitor approaches, a young German student, maybe 16 years old. The student asks, "Is it true they built these ships in 40 days?" "It's true." "How?" "Our shipyards needed months for smaller vessels. They welded instead of riveting. They prefabricated entire sections in different factories. They used semi-skilled workers following simplified procedures. They sacrificed elegance for speed, and they built 2,700 of them in 4 years. That seems impossible. It seemed impossible to us too. That's why we lost. We defined impossible based on our capabilities, then assumed the enemy shared our limitations. They didn't. They redefined possible. The architect continues, "The Americans didn't win because they were better engineers. They won because they were better at industrial organization. They turned warfare into a production problem and solved it with methods we considered crude. But crude won. Will it always be that way? Will industry always beat skill? Then, I don't know, but I know this. Never again assume the enemy is limited by your assumptions. We thought Americans couldn't produce like this because we couldn't produce like this. That mistake cost us everything." They stand together, looking at the technical drawings of a ship that shouldn't exist, built by methods that shouldn't work, produced in quantities that shouldn't be possible. But they did exist. They did work. They were possible. And 2,700 of them, along with 324,750 aircraft, and 2,382,311 trucks, and millions of tons of ammunition, proved that sometimes the impossible is just something you haven't figured out how to do yet. The Americans figured it out. Germany didn't. And that made all the difference. In the end, the most sophisticated intelligence network in Europe lost to reality. The finest engineering culture in the world lost to mass production. The most efficient military organization in history lost to what they called American chaos, because chaos, when harnessed and scaled, becomes overwhelming force. And overwhelming force doesn't need to be elegant. It just needs to keep coming. The Liberty ships kept coming. The bombers kept coming. The trucks, the tanks, the bullets, all of it kept coming, in impossible quantities, produced by impossible methods, defeating the finest military machine Germany had ever built. And in their prison cells and interrogation rooms, German officials sat with production figures that proved their defeat had been mathematically certain from 1941 onward. They just hadn't believed the mathematics, because the numbers were impossible.